Hello, welcome to J Lowe Artist YouTube channel. Thanks for joining me on this artistic adventure. Today we'll be working with charcoal. We're going to start out with our white charcoal. White charcoal is easier to start out with than your dark charcoal because your white charcoal can be easily erased. It can be covered over. The black will cover the white, whereas the white does not cover the black. And the black grinds into the surface a little bit more. And so we're going to start out with the white charcoal and do all our preliminary drawing with the white charcoal. And then we'll switch over and do the black as well. So the first thing we need to do is establish where everything goes. I want his paw to be right down at the very bottom. I'm going to leave myself just a little bit of space at the bottom. I'm just going to say that's where I want his paw to go, somewhere towards the bottom. And then up from there, of course, is his jowls, and you can just say, well, right here, somewhere up in there, this is kind of where I want his jaw to go, and maybe that's a little high. That may not be where it goes. I'm just establishing my size. His head, however, is quite large, so you can maybe somewhere about, maybe not quite in the middle, leave yourself a little bit more room on the left side than you do on the right, and just kind of make this big old circle and say, that's where I want his head. That's where it's going to go. And that ear on our right side, his left ear, almost touches that edge. So you can go out and just make a little mark and say that's about where I want his ear to go. And you can just kind of draw that in very quickly. Remember, we're just establishing size here. We're not really trying to get perfect proportions. It's got another ear on the other side, about the same size. This is not a perfect description of his ear yet. That will come. And you can say, well, okay, if that circle there represents his head, his eyes are almost smack dab in the middle of his head. You go to the bottom of that ear on both sides, and you kind of come through here. That's about right through the center. So you've got about the same amount of space, top and bottom. So somewhere in there is his eye. You just go ahead and make yourself a little circle there to say, that's about where his eye goes. We can lower that or raise that. Right now we're just establishing the size that we want things. This is our composition. And again, we might have to adjust that. We might have to move it out or whatever. But right now, that's where I'm going to put it. And right in between and about the bottom of that circle there is where his nose goes. You can just make yourself a little triangle shape there. It's about the same width of his eyes. So if his eye is here and this eye is there, that nose is about the same width. And if you look at that and think, oh, it's too big, it probably is. Got a little mouth down below, and then his chin. I was thinking maybe his chin was a little high, so I'm gonna have to lower his chin. But as you start adding things in, you start making adjustments. Start saying, well, this is about right in here. Maybe it's a little bit bigger than I thought it was. Start making comparisons. The outside of his jowls is about where the outside of that eye is, so I'm going to have to move this eye over just a little bit. Or move that jowl in just a little bit, but same thing on the other eye. It's about in the right place. Now I can adjust that paw. It ends just to the right of the nose, so it's going to be over here somewhere. That kind of ends down in there. And the end of the paw goes beyond the head, so if I come down here, it's about right in there. Now I'm just starting to look at all those shapes that I put in. Start adding some things in. Here's his back leg. His back. I'm going to start adjusting things like his ear, putting in a little bit more detail. Anything that you need to erase, go ahead. That white, you really don't need to erase the white very much. It'll cover really, really easily. So now, I'm going to start just adding a few things, and I'm using my white pencil still. I'm just going to add some of those light areas, just to see if it kind of helps me to get my proportions a little bit easier. All this can be easily erased. So if it's not quite right, I can put it in the right place and a little bit later. Remember that our animals are fairly symmetrical. So like the little spots around his jowls, kind of symmetrical. And this, using your white is going to help you to get that. Again, if it's not right, this erases. Especially if you're on the surface like this, using the side of your pencil. Anything that you think is kind of light, go ahead and just sketch that in. You're going to be able to see your proportions once your light starts to get sketched in. Your proportioning is going to get better. You're going to see things and go, oh, need to change that, need to make this bigger or smaller, whatever. Be a little bit easier to do when that white is in there. Even the shines of his eye, I'm going to try to put those in. Just leave out the dark. This eye is too high. I'm looking at it now going, oh, it's in the wrong spot. I'm going to lower it just a little bit. That's better. So again, use your gut feeling. If you look at it and think, oh, that's not right, it probably isn't. Once we get that black, you're committed. You know, that black represents your commitment. And so try to get as much of your proportioning done as you can. If you wanted to, you could throw in your whiskers right now, because eventually you're going to have to, like over the leg, you're going to have to leave out little spots anyway. Sometimes, and I found this out when I'm doing color drawing, that's what comes next after this, is that the first color you layer in, the first thing you layer in, even if you do stuff over the top of it, it's always going to be there. And you can scratch the surface or erase it, and it'll always go back to the first thing you laid in. So sometimes laying in that light area first is going to help you. You can keep the dark over the top, or you can erase it down or scratch it out until you're back to that first thing you laid in. So one of the things that is really mesmerizing about big cats are their eyes. So I like to do the eyes right from the start, get them done. So I'm going to go in with my black here, and I'm going to first start out that area around the eye has to be nice and round. So I'm just going to spend some extra time to make sure that eye is nice and round. And I'm not concerned that that edge is so hard and sharp. And like normal, I might have to come back in and do more on top of it. That's okay. It's easier to go more than it is less. So see how that just adds that contrast, and all of a sudden, boom. A lot of that I can get with my cotton swab. So don't be afraid to leave out some of those fuzzy, soft areas in favor of doing it later with your cotton swab. How do you get those eyes the same size? I start from the outside and keep working in until I'm about the right size. You take a piece of tracing paper and lay it over and trace it, move it over, and if you want. But that dark ring, you've got plenty of space to play with in there. These eyes aren't perfectly symmetrical anyway. What do you do for the spots? You could, if you wanted to, make yourself a little guide, like little rings or something. This works especially for tigers because their spots are mostly evenly spaced, but they're not the same on both sides. And so you can make yourself a little guide, just little rings that help you to kind of figure out where all that stuff goes, if you want. But just remember that they're fairly symmetrical, not perfectly, but fairly. So like if I do a little spot above his eye over here, he's going to have another little spot above his eye over here. They're not the same, but their positioning is very similar. And so you can go back and forth and just do that, back and forth. And it's not really important that those spots are exactly right. Try to get as close as you can, because that's what makes it what it is. Nose is fairly symmetrical. It's really hard to see what's going on inside that nose because it's very dark. So sometimes you have to almost guess. I know there's nostrils in there. I know it's probably a little lighter here and there. So I'm just kind of guessing what's going on inside that nose. When you're doing the little dots across his jowls, just make sure they're symmetrical, that they're the same. There's almost like a curve that they both follow. You just kind of want to keep that kind of curve going. So starting with the eyes, I'm just going to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and do the spots around him. do one on one side and switch over to the other side so that I'm at least sort of symmetrical. So just throw the dark areas in as best you can. If you miss a spot, that's okay. Don't worry about outlines. We're going to do that in a little bit. Spots will create the outline. If you have difficulty raising your hand up off the paper, take a piece of tracing paper and lay it down. Put your hand on that. Or just keep your hand up off your surface. You draw faster that way anyway. Get on a roll, it gets a lot easier to do. And as you get away from the eye, it seems like the less exact you have to be with everything. So then you just try to stay close to what you see. Anybody know any good Jaguar trivia? I know the natives of South America, even the Mayas and Incas, thought of them as ghosts because they were very silent. They're one of two animals in this world that have no fear of man. They will hunt man for food. Does anybody know what the other animal is that has no fear of man? That will hunt man for food? Polar bear. That's why polar bears are so dangerous. Other bears, even the grizzly bear, will shy away from man. They just don't want to be part of it. Polar bears and jaguars. You think of these spots as like swirling around the eyes. Kind of just swirl around the eyes. The little spots, especially on the back, are called rosettes. They start looking like little flowers. So as you get away from the eye, as you move towards the back, you'll see them kind of becoming a pattern, like a little flower pattern. And the difference between like a jaguar and a leopard basically are just their spots. So I have lost track of where my spots were. I am just throwing in spots. Trying to stay in the same pattern. I don't want to lose that pattern, but So once you've got enough charcoal on the surface, you can now start to blend it, smear it. So I'm just going to take my cotton swab, brand new cotton swab. I'm just going to grab some of this darkness, and I'm going to use a little bit of that anywhere that I see a little bit of grayness. Like in his eye, there's quite a bit of gray around that eye. Just going to put that in there. Just blend it out. I'm going to try to stay away from the highlights, and I'm going to even throw those highlights back into it. And that gray down the nose. So I can start blending in some of that. And just touch lightly. You don't need a lot. Now it's like painting. You can take that charcoal and just bring a little out, just kind of paint with it a little bit. And I definitely have to come back into some of this and darken it up. Because once you steal a little bit of that gray from there, it's never as black, it's never as dark as it was. And we're going to come back in and really make those highlights pop. So some of those areas that are very white, we've got to go back into them and really make them pop. You can use your cotton swab to get some of those little hairs, a little light hair like right here on his ear. You can use your cotton swab to just kind of come through. Leave the gray areas gray. But you can put in a little texture with it, you know, to make that look a little more hairy. And we can come back in with our white charcoal and pull some of that lighter stuff out as well. So again, it's kind of like painting. You just grab a little bit of that dark and just touch it. You don't need a lot. And I like to, on the ends, especially where it's soft and fuzzy, like bring a little out. Leave that edge just a little soft and fuzzy. And once you have enough on your cotton swab, come back into some of those darker areas. Put those in with your cotton swab. And you can always add more. If it's really a light gray, just leave it alone because it's already there. You can come back into it, so don't, when in doubt, leave it out. You know, if you don't go too far with it, I guess is what I'm saying. You can always come in and add more. The other thing that cotton swab does is it just softens in all that area. Of course, Jaguars are very soft. This technique works with pretty much anything. Here I am putting in some little spots with my cotton swab. So if you have some lighter spots, you can just go in there with your cotton swab and give it a little rub. This works with, like, if you're drawing a human face and this human face has blemishes or freckles that are important to the portrait, use your cotton swab. Once you get enough charcoal on there, makes it a lot easier. Like I say, you don't need to go everywhere, just where you think you need it. Sometimes on the edges, if you want to see some of that edge, like right behind his jowl right there, there's a shadow or something, and I think, well, I need that little bit of an edge. You can throw that in with your cotton swab. Right under his chin, maybe along his leg. And that is so fast to do. Even his whiskers, not all his whiskers are white. So if you've got like a dark whisker, you can do that with your cotton swab. So that's basically his head. Now we need to get the rest of his body, and that'll go by fairly quickly. The foot is important, but the rest of the body, not so important. One thing I do want to do here while I'm just here is I'm just going to take my white and really put in those highlights, especially in his eyes. That's what's going to make those eyes pop. A little bit of light, and it's not a lot, it's just here and there. But look how much difference this eye made than this eye. Just, it's that contrast that just makes it pop. So I'm going to do the same thing on this eye. Just make that eye pop. Now those eyes are just popping. And I need a little bit more light in his fur, just here and there. It's not everywhere, it's just little spots. See how that just makes that come alive? You can blend that too if you feel like you need to. Just take the other end of your cotton swab, have one end for the dark and one end for the light. Now all of a sudden our cat is popping a little bit. That white is really going to make that happen. You can add just a few little lines here and there too, just to make that look like fur. Just here and there. So you're going to get little lighter areas of that fur. In other parts, you can just leave it out. When we're all done with this, you'll want to fix it with fixative. And when you do your own, because you're going to have one that you want to do on your own, you may want to spray it several times with fixative. Then go back in it, do a little more drying, and then spray it again, do a little more drying. You just keep drawing and blending until it's the way you want it to be. I'm about ready to do his body. Just because I want to get that part done, and then I can come back into it even. Do some more. So here's those rosettes up his back. Just think little flowers. You have some thicker and thinner sides. What makes them even worse is they'll hunt you from the trees. So if you're in a thick jungle, you won't even know they're there. They're right above you. They'll pounce down on you. So there's the edge of his back, and I didn't define it. I just drew in dots, and then I'm just going to leave it. It'd be fun to do a picture of Jaguar and then put things in the spots. People have to find the hidden objects in the spots. I'm really not trying to get those spots exactly, but I am trying to stay in the pattern. Try to stay with that pattern. It'll look better. Anything that gets farther away from you, gets out of focus, it's going to be all fuzzy anyway. Your background should be kind of fuzzy. So even that back leg, keep it fuzzy. Don't sharp edges, just kind of sketch it in really fast. The rest of this I think I can get with my cotton swab and be pretty realistic about it. Remember, your gray is already there. Those mid-tone grays, the light gray is already there. Just do the darker ones. And if you need more contrast, put in some lights where the white part is. You got it. Here's that back leg. It's so soft and fuzzy. Not because it's soft and fuzzy, but because it's out of focus. So go ahead and do it. Soft and fuzzy. Use your cotton swab. Don't put any quick detail into that. That's really all you need. I can come back in, lighten it up here and there, and that's about it. You can do this with your fingers too if you wanted to, but I don't like the mess on my fingers. You can use the cotton swab to do any of the background too if you want to put some of that in the background. There are some little dark areas that kind of help define your object. So you can do that too with your cotton swab if you want to. Just so your background isn't so boring. Last thing I want to do is I really need that contrast. Need to make that pop. So I'm going to go back into it with my white. See if I can't pull out some of that really, really light area. Anywhere. Whether it's in the eyes. Make that pop. Again, if you have a problem of not being able to keep your hand up off the paper, take a piece of tracing paper, lay it in there, put your hand on that, and then use that. But it's not as fast. This way is faster. And if you use the side of your pencil like this and go right to the end, sometimes you can even put your finger right on the end of your pencil to give it some pressure. Because you want that high contrast. I'm going to go in between some of the little spots that I did, just a few. If I look at it and I think that's a little bit lighter in there, I'm going to do that. You don't have to do it everywhere. Just where it feels lighter. It'll make those spots kind of come out as well. Last thing you want to do is sign this thing so it becomes yours. And you can sign it with black or white, doesn't matter. I'm going to do white just because it's in my hand. And I hope you had a lovely time and learned something. And just remember, art makes life better. I hope you have a lovely day.